Nichole, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. This has been a long time in the making. Nick,
What's up?
what's up? We wanted to have this episode like pretty much right when we started the podcast, and you were like just pushing us off, and we found out it's because you didn't want to be here and you don't like us.
That's right. I was procrastinating because I was a little bit nervous.
On the bigger podcast circuit or what? Are you too good for us?
Yeah, you too. She was waiting for Joe Rogan to call. That's all right. You have a pretty interesting background, especially in the field of healthcare and with your own personal health. And that is something that we wanted to kind of tap into a little bit, get a little bit more knowledge on, a little bit more background. And I think that is something that's going to really help anybody who listens to this. I really like kind of the outside the box approach that you have and how that just integrates with your personal story, your professional career. So is that something that you can just kind of jump into, or at least tell us a little bit about yourself if you want, and then go into it?
Sure. So I'm Nichole, and these are my brother-in-laws. I'm married to Brock's brother, Tyler, for the last 13 and a half years. So I've been part of the family for a while. As far as health and stuff like that goes, I feel like when I grew up, my mom was very healthy. Like she was always, making lots of homemade stuff. We never ate out much. And so I grew up with a mentality of health and doing things naturally. But I didn't really understand a lot of what that meant. I just knew that I like to try to go the natural route instead of, medications or different things like that. And so when I was 16, I decided that I wanted to be a nurse. And so I went to JCC for a couple of years. And I graduated and I started working out in Utica as a registered nurse. And I loved that. It was a great job. And I did that for about 9 years before I had kids. And then I've been a stay-at-home mom ever since. I loved it. I loved being a nurse. It was a great job.
Where did you do that mostly?
So when I graduated, I moved right to Utica, and I worked at St. Luke's, and I did telemetry, so mostly cardiac. And then I did that for about 4 years, and then I moved on and started working as like a nurse educator, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed teaching. I got to train the new grads and teach them classes, teach them cardiac classes, teach, basic life support, advanced life support, stuff like that. And I really enjoyed that. That was really fun.
Do you feel like nurses are kind of like doctors in a lot of ways are specialized, unless you're like a family doctor or an ER doctor or something like that? If you work with the heart, you're a cardiologist. If you work with, the lungs, you're a pulmonologist.
Pulmonologist, yep.
Hey, all right.
Yep.
But nurses are kind of like, they can just be everywhere, it seems like.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot to nursing. You can specialize. It's one degree, but I worked in so many different areas. So I started out with cardiology, and they'll give you some of the extra training you need, but a lot of it you just learn as you go. I've also worked in a psychiatric unit. I've worked drug and alcohol detoxing. I've worked on kidney units. I've worked in so many different areas, and honestly, you don't get a ton of extra training. So you're right. You do have to at least understand a lot of the basics, so that way you can move from unit to unit. Doctors do. They still have to understand how everything works. But especially now with how much information there is out there, that's why you have to have the specialties. So now it's like you go and see a doctor, and most likely if you're having any sort of somewhat serious issue, you're going to go see a specialist, because there's just too much information for one doctor to even have a clue.
I've never thought about this. How does a doctor get to put their job like how do you become a specialist as a doctor? Like, what makes them a cardiologist? Like, just because he says he is, or like because he does that mostly, or do you have to like study it?
No, they'll go for special training. So there's different, like you'll go to be like a family practice or internal medicine or emergency medicine. There's different specialties within doctors. So if you're going to go to be a cardiologist, you'll get all of that extra training, and you'll be a certified cardiologist.
So like they graduate from, like they finish school, and then they get like work training.
I think so. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure how that works, to to be honest. I don't know if they also specialize in school or if it's mostly just in their internships that they do that.
Interesting. I never thought about that.
How difficult is it to keep up with information? I feel like that would be one of the biggest struggles in medicine, is that there's constantly changes, there's constantly new data, there's new studies. Like, I think about even during the pandemic, like how could a doctor who's seeing patients, who's kind of navigating this, novel thing, keep up with all the literature and be well informed and just on any range of topics? Seems like that's a full-time job by itself. You almost need like a person that's like your scribe or something, walking you through life. Hey, here's the new data. Here's what you should be doing.
Right.
They have to do this by themselves. That's crazy.
Well, I think that you can really see a difference in different healthcare professionals. And some of that, there will be, like in the unit that I worked on, we would have, monthly meetings of things that had changed, new medications that had come out and stuff like that. But I think when you're a provider, you really have to be proactive in researching that because there's so much information that comes out. And the other thing that's really difficult is there's almost too much information nowadays and you don't know what's true. So it's really hard. You can look at one study and then you can find another study that completely contradicts that study. And it's really hard to know what is actually true. So I think that's probably pretty difficult. I feel like it's got to be for providers just to sort through the amount of information that's coming in and know how to take that information and even apply it to their patients, because sometimes the studies are a little black and white, but I feel like a lot of times they're confusing. Yeah. There's a lot of variables. It's hard to know what exactly is true. Something might say, okay, that, this study showed that there was an impact on whatever, blood pressure, but like how much of an impact and what were those variables? So I feel like the information coming out, it's really important to stay up on the information. But there's so much of it, it's really difficult too. So I'm sure that's where the specialties come in, because it's a lot easier to stay up on, information in one specialty than versus everything. But there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, that seems...
And a lot of conflicting viewpoints on what routes to take with medicine.
And I can't imagine how difficult that gets when something gets politicized too. Like,
let's just get down to the meat of it. Is modern medicine good or bad? Go.
I think I should not answer that question.
What a segue.
It's quite the segue.
Well, you mentioned kind of like looking at medicine and natural remedies since you were growing up, had kind of shifted your framework a little bit. How did that impact your professional career?
I don't feel like when I worked as a nurse for those like 8 or 9 years, I was really just into the medicine of it. I loved the job. I don't want to say believed everything that I was doing, but kind of. And I was working a little bit more in emergent situations, so it wasn't necessarily patients coming in with chronic health issues that we were dealing with. We were working more with acute cardiac issues. And so you're going to use a lot of those medications. You're going to do a lot of those protocols that are set in place. But now that I'm back in school and I'm working towards my nurse practitioner, we focus a lot more on the chronic issues, which is you deal with those in a completely different way.
Oh, yeah.
So now that I'm dealing with those, I feel like I have a completely almost different viewpoint than I did 10 years ago. And then even going through some of the stuff, my own health issues has completely given me a different viewpoint from a patient standpoint of the medical field, the process of it. I'm thankful for it. It has a lot of strengths, but there's a lot of weaknesses. There's a lot of areas that need improvement. And as a patient, especially nowadays, like it can be very discouraging when you're dealing with a chronic health condition to try to figure out how to address it, where you need to go. A lot of times it's you go to the doctor, they run a few tests, and if those tests don't show anything, you're left hanging. That's it. To find someone that will actually like dig deep to try to find the root cause of a problem is very difficult nowadays because there's not a lot of time. There's not a lot of doctors, to be honest. So the waiting periods, you'll wait months to get into a specialist, and then they're going to run a few tests. And if they don't find anything, that's about it. That's where your journey ends a lot of times. And it's very frustrating if you don't get answers.
Yeah. So to like boil that down in like stupid people terms, you're saying like in the emergency field, it's like protocols and in like you just do what the book says you do because like they're bleeding out or whatever. Like they're having something right now happening. But in the like what you're getting into is more like longevity, solutions for longevity and like health and wellness, where it's like a completely different mind. Like it's not all about what can we do now to save the patient. It's like what we do now, how's it going to affect them long term, and is there a better way to do it?
Right. Yeah. So if it's an emergent situation, there's like one or two ways you're going to handle it. But it's how, the process from before there's an emergent situation. What are you going to do to help prevent those emergent situations? Or after the emergent situation, then what do you do? How are you going to treat that? Are you going to just go home on medications, not address the root issue of the cause? Or are you going to try and dig deep, change some lifestyle modifications and see if you can actually, address the root issue of the cause?
It's like preventative care.
Yeah, preventative care, but also just not putting a Band-Aid on things. I think that's the biggest thing is, a lot of patients, and I see it now, they come in and they have a symptom and they want a medication that day they can walk home and take, and so they can feel better. And there's not even much of a discussion on, okay, what could be causing it? Like a majority of people with high blood pressure, they don't know why they have high blood pressure. There's not a reason for it.
That's interesting. Yeah, like it's not just about patients who want the same thing that you're studying. It's probably mostly people who need their minds changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought about it that way. Like not everyone is like you or me, like would care about the long-term solution that's better for us. It's like, yeah, I think you're right. I never thought that most patients would be the opposite. Just wanting, the medication or whatever that their doctor says they should take. Yeah. So it's like changing the industry from within, which seems very daunting.
It is. And I don't know if it's like a culture change. Like, I don't know if it's just more our generation, if the older generation is different. But nowadays it does seem like most people are not interested in finding the cause of whatever it is that they're struggling with, because the amount of work it takes to figure out the root cause of something, it can take, instead of grabbing a pill and feeling better the next day, it could take months of work. It will take lifestyle changes. And to be honest, a lot of people nowadays are not interested in making those hard choices when they can take a pill and feel better instantly for a while.
Okay. How much of it is that like physicians aren't willing to take them down that journey? They're also giving quick solutions and, kind of circle the revolving door of patients. I'm going to go down the conspiracy road here for a second. Is there anything to do you think, with like more patients you see, the more money you make? Does that have anything to do with it?
The business of medicine.
The quicker turnover of patients means you can see more patients. Yeah. The quicker solutions are better for money making in general. Yeah.
Like is there a part of that
are people
there?
Are the patients like conditioned to be like that because that's how they know doctors treat them? Like doctors always treat us like this. Like I'm not saying that that's true. I'm saying that is that a mindset? Like doctors just get patients out the door. So of course we would feel that way. Like want the faster solution because that's what we think is available to us because that's how doctors treat us. Is that a component at all, or is that just...
I think that is a component. I think insurance companies play a huge part in that too, because they're only going to reimburse for a certain amount. So, and that's one of the reasons I'm sure we'll get into why I'm working on my functional medicine degree, is because, usually if you go see a doctor, a nurse practitioner with a functional medicine degree, you're going to be paying for that out of pocket, but you're also going to be sitting down with them probably initially for 2 or 3 hours the first time you go see them. Where when you go to see your provider, you have a 15-minute visit slot, and a majority of that time is not with the provider.
Which seems crazy when you say that out loud.
It is. It's 15, 20 minutes. You're going to see the nurse, and then you're going to see the nurse practitioner or the doctor, whoever, for a few minutes. Unless it's like an annual physical, then you can get like 40 minutes for a visit. But otherwise, you get about 15, 20 minutes, and that's it. And insurance companies don't necessarily cover, if you're going to spend a lot more time in that, they're not going to necessarily cover for it. Yeah. And also another thing is, if you want insurance companies to cover the visit, I feel like in some ways you have to show them what you did.
Sure.
So the easiest way to do that is by, they came in with a cold, and so you're going to prescribe them whatever, antibiotics or nasal sprays. It makes it very simple to say, okay, here's the problem. Here's what I did. Now they're gone.
Now reimburse us.
Right. But maybe they're coming in every single week with the same cold.
Right.
That's a whole different issue. And in order to figure that out, you can't do that in 15 minutes. Like, I've had so many patients come in and even ask, like, okay, I want to change my diet. I want to eat healthier. And they have no clue where to start. Like, things that seem basic for you and I, as far as healthy foods, they don't even understand, like chicken from KFC is not healthy. It's not chicken, like it's a big difference between that and like organic chicken.
Why'd you have to say that?
Sorry, Nick.
Thanks for ruining our lives.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Now my stomach's growling.
Yeah.
That's a good perspective. So to be fair, like, time is a problem.
Time is a huge
The
problem.
medical field is overloaded.
Yeah.
We need more doctors to be able to spend that in-depth amount of time to be able to show what they're actually working on, which is not the pace of our culture, which is not the pace of insurance companies, which is not the mindset of Americans. The mindset is, I need a quick fix so I feel better and then I can go on about my day. It's not, I'm going to go and make lifestyle changes now for the rest of my life with somebody who actually cares.
Yep.
That's very interesting. And also, there's certainly always going to be a component of nefarious intent. There's doctors out there, they're just going to push the pills because they get kickbacks and for whatever reason.
Yep.
That's certainly part of it. But like, how much of it comes down to who are you going to trust as a patient? And my brother Tyson owns a mechanic shop, as you guys know. And he said it's very easy that when an accident comes in or something like that for a repair, that an insurance company is covering 100% to be like, sounds like it's a markup time.
Yeah.
And like, you have to be on guard for that. And you have to like have some moral integrity to say, nope, this is where it is.
Yeah.
And you're going to have problems in any field of business or because the medical field certainly is business for sure.
Oh, yeah,
Some
absolutely.
crazy percentage of medical expenditure is collecting payment, administration. So like, there's definitely going to be incentives there for sure. And I think that just needs to be said. No question, there's a significant lack of the available time. Yeah. And so that's a big component.
Yeah, available time and also what insurances will cover is huge. You can get an insurance. Somebody can come in and they can be sick and they'll cover any antibiotic or whatever it is that you're going to order for them, but they won't pay for them to go see a dietitian or nutritionist or something like that. They might cover Ozempic or a weight loss medication, but they won't cover
A gym membership
or going to see a dietitian or somebody that could actually help them deal with the root cause of the problem and help them change their lifestyle. But then again, there's also people that they're not interested in that. Like, it's definitely more work to go down that route. But there are for the people that want that, they want to change their lifestyle. They maybe have chronic autoimmune issues and they can't figure out why they're sick all the time and they're trying everything. They want that, but if it's really hard to go find a provider who will go down that road of digging deep and not just ordering the basic tests and then stopping there and saying, you get categorized, I feel like, as a patient. If you come in with the same problem, if you're having migraines and you're coming in every couple weeks for migraines, you're going to get dismissed after a few weeks. And be not that they won't see you, but they're going to be like, oh, well, she just has migraines and she's coming back in. Well, of course, none of the medications work. So it's annoying as the provider, because like, well, we've tried everything. There's nothing else we can do for you. Well, we haven't really, because we haven't figured out why the person's getting the migraines. And that's not even much of a cause for discussion. Right. It's just, well, none of the medications worked. So it's a whole different way of looking at it, but it's expensive. It's hard to find someone that will go down that road with you. And it takes a lot of work on the part of the practitioner and the patient.
Right. Yeah. Is it, and it's extra cost out of your pocket. Like, you're not going to get your insurance to cover high protein diets.
Right. Yeah.
Which, might be a
treadmill.
Right. Or even just going to see the provider. I know when my son got Lyme disease, he was like 4 or 5 years old, and they had tried antibiotics with him, but he was allergic. There's 3 antibiotics you can take, and he was allergic to 2, and he was too young to take the 3rd, so he never got the full dose of antibiotics. And we thought maybe he was okay, but then, maybe a year down the road, he started getting a lot of symptoms. And I wasn't interested in just like, I had done a lot of research myself. And I was like, I wasn't interested in just putting him on antibiotics every few months when he got a flare up. I'm like, that's going to kill his body. Like, that's terrible for you. And we went to go see more of a functional medicine doctor, but like we had to pay out of pocket. Like, it was very expensive. So, you know, that's definitely a deterrent for a lot of people because they
don't have the option to pay for it.
Right. It's very pricey and insurance companies don't pay for it. I do feel hopeful. Sometimes I feel like with the way that healthcare just recently is changing and, you know, they're changing a lot of the stuff that's allowed in our foods. I'm hoping it will go more down that route where insurance companies will see the value of paying for functional medicine practitioners or more of those preventative measures or preventative visits or dietitians, stuff like that. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see if that happens. But
quick side note, Nick, you want to get your tinfoil hat out again?
Oh,
always.
Let's get 3 in here. Let's do it.
You know where Lyme's disease originated?
I do.
You do?
I think. Like, I feel like I
was
once
it China?
Lyme,
Cut that out.
Connecticut.
Go ahead.
It's in Connecticut.
Oh,
And
yeah. You told me this one
It's
time.
right across the water from the Plum Island Animal Disease Center.
Okay.
Way.
That was researching bioweapons.
Really?
I've heard rumors about it, but I never know it's true. It's
So
one of
actually,
those
the
things.
New Haven Register has a
pretty
whole
crazy.
thing about it.
Okay.
From back in 2019.
I mean, I've heard it's man-made.
That's
What?
what they say.
That's what I've heard.
Wow, I
Get
never
your,
did any of
get your
this.
hats on. Okay, so going into when you're talking to patients with the mindset of just give me something quick, I just want relief. That's so countercultural to where we are. We need instant relief. We need instant fix. We need not lifestyle changes. We need just something that's going to be a magic pill and make me go away.
Yeah, with massive side effects is the part.
Exactly.
Right.
Problem is, it gives side effects that needs other medication, and before you know
yeah.
it, the rap sheet is like,
Yeah.
The degree to the amount of antibiotics that are given out with the detriment that they bring with long-term use. Like, I don't understand how that's even like legal.
Yeah.
Or like to not explain that to patients
Right.
at the very least. And like no doctor has ever said that to me. Like no one's
Right.
ever said. So for example, like when I got pain medication after surgery, they say like, you might feel dizzy, you might feel this and that. Maybe don't drive if you feel that. But like when they gave me the antibiotics for something before, they didn't say like, they don't tell you that when you take this, it might, compromise your immune system for up to a year.
Right. Yeah.
That's never been said.
So I'm doing a nursing research class right now, and you have to pick a topic at the beginning of the semester, and you go through it, and you actually do a whole proposal on how, if you were going to do a study on this, how you would do the study, and it's very in depth. But that's my topic, is actually antibiotics and how they affect the human gut microbiome. And you're right. Antibiotics get handed out every single day that I'm seeing patients. I mean,
It's like one of the greatest inventions of the 21st century.
They come in with something that you know is a viral infection, but because patients want to leave with something, and they will be angry at you if you do not prescribe them something, and they will be back in 2 days when they're not better. And so you give them an antibiotic that lasts for 7 days, let's say 5-7 days, and they're better in 5 to 7 days. Well, of course they are, because that's when viruses get better, but they think it's the antibiotic. So they always want an antibiotic.
And like, is that an insurance covered event usually?
Yeah. Insurance would cover it.
That's insane.
I mean, there's times
That's
that,
crazy.
yeah. So people come in,
That's like misdiagnosing somebody intentionally, and then insurance paid for it.
Yeah, insurance will pay for it, because a lot of times if they're not swabbed, or you can't prove that it's viral, but a lot of times you just know based on the symptoms it's viral, and we are taught not to just hand out antibiotics. However, when you're in that situation and patients come in, especially with their children, right? So their kids come in, they're sick, and they want those antibiotics for those children. And they do not understand the effects that those antibiotics are having on the kids. And especially when they're getting them, and then they're getting another one 3 months later for an ear infection again, and then they're getting another one 3 months later. Well, maybe the kid's eating dairy, and maybe that's causing, instead of trying to figure out what's causing them, it's just antibiotic after antibiotic. And it affects their immune system. It affects it long term. A lot of times these people are not even instructed to supplement with probiotics or probiotic type foods, sourdough, kimchi, like things that have just a lot of bacteria, good bacteria in it, good yogurts, not just the sugary garbage yogurts, but actually good yogurts. Majority of the time, like you give antibiotics to someone, you're not prescribing them probiotic to take with it when they should be taking it
Like
for the next
always?
year. Not necessarily. It depends on what their diet is like. I mean, I think probiotics are great. I'm a huge proponent of taking them because the amount of garbage that we eat, even if we're eating healthy, we still like get a decent amount of sugar and all this stuff that also hurts your microbiome. So I think that they're always, they always can be beneficial.
What are probiotics?
Probiotics?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just somebody would ask me the other day, and I don't know. I'd explain it to them, but like I want to make sure I explain it right. Go ahead.
So basically,
Some guy I know on the street.
Nick's like, I don't know if I told him the right thing. So you can take it in a pill. There's different forms that you can take it in, but basically it's a whole bunch of good strains of bacteria that your intestinal tract. It's not even just in your intestinal tract. It's really in your whole body, but a majority of it is in your intestinal tract. So that's where it's focused.
It's in the word. Got it.
And it's the good bacteria that helps you to digest your food and process your food. And again, it's all over your body, so it's not just related to digestion, but there's so many, millions and millions and millions of good bacteria or bad bacteria in your body. And when they get out of whack with antibiotics, it throws your whole body off.
You
and
get sick.
You
So
get
the
sick.
probiotics help restore the good stuff that the antibiotics might have affected.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah. It helps restore balance. And they will say that even in children, if you're taking antibiotics at a young age, you'll kill off bacteria they'll never be able to get back. Whoa. Like it's not just a small, they don't just have a small effect. They have a bigger effect on people down the road and their health down the road. And that's one thing I love about the functional medicine degree is that when you see a patient for the first time, you go all the way. You don't just say, okay, when did your symptoms start? And start from there. You start all the way back from when your mom was pregnant with you. What was her health? What type of delivery did you have? When you were a child, what antibiotics did you have? That's a huge topic that you cover just to see like how much their body was thrown off, how much their microbiome was affected. Then when did those symptoms start? Like, because all those things play a part in it. And I think now they're figuring it out more than ever what role that antibiotics play in hurting people's health.
It's like being a detective. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that what you like about
is.
it? Is that like a big thing that you like about it? Is just like investigating it's like diagnostics and troubleshooting.
Kind of. It is to a certain degree, except like I mentioned earlier, the hardest part is that there's so much information and there's so much conflicting information, especially when it comes to like what it means to be healthier. What is a healthy diet, or what is good for you? What is bad for you? There's so much conflicting information that sometimes it feels difficult to figure out where the truth is. I'm a person, I always want to know, like, what's the truth? Where's the truth? And when you can't figure it out, or it's very gray, it's very frustrating. Because I want to know, like, what is causing my patient's issue? How can I help them?
It's like a itch you can't scratch.
Yeah. And it's not always one thing. That's the thing. Like a lot of times with any chronic issues or a lot of health issues, it's not like, okay, you're having stomach issues, it's just the gluten. No, probably it's like a mix of 5 or 6 or 10 things in your lifestyle that are causing this issue. Different for each person. That's why care has to be so individualized, and it can't just be this checklist of here's the tests we check, here's the meds we give, because it's really different for each person.
Right.
So
No one size fits all answer.
Yeah.
You mentioned microbiome. Can you explain that a little bit more for our listeners?
Sure.
What that is.
Yeah, the microbiome is just the bacteria that is in your body, which a lot of people probably aren't even really aware that there's a lot, hundreds or thousands of different strains of bacteria in your body that regulate your digestive system, many areas of your body. And they play a huge role in your health, your immunity. And so that's what the microbiome is. It's just that the tiny little bacteria that's all over in your body.
And that can be heavily supplemented or, hindered by your diet.
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
And even the way you were raised, hot button issues, vaccines nowadays. So all of that kind of comes into this complex picture of your overall health and how can we address each individual person. That sounds impossible when you have 350 plus million people. I don't know how many doctors there are, but there's not that many.
There's not enough.
You know, there's not enough.
No.
Do we need to, as a country, take a more holistic approach with our diet, with what we're consuming, with longer term studies on our medication, which feels like for the most part, we pretend that we say we do. Even though when it comes to pharmaceutical companies, that is a business.
Right.
And we don't even need to get into their intentions or what that might be.
Yeah.
Or the potential downside of what that could be. Like you kind of mentioned before, like you see this kind of this new way that we're going, and hopefully, you know, we can see some improvement in that way. Are you encouraged by, you know, the new director of HHS, or the direction that it seems like we might be going, or at least the ground roots feeling that is coming up, like, oh, actually we're poisoning ourselves all the time with our food, with pharmaceuticals, with how we're treating everybody with just a blanket medication.
Yeah.
Like, do we need to go back to the family doctor who goes around to people's houses and knows those people and knows how they were born and has the time to sit down with them and then walks them through how to get better?
Right.
Is that even realistic?
I mean, I would hope so. But yeah, I do feel encouraged somewhat that they are beginning to address all of the garbage that's in our food, because I don't even think people realize it. I mean, anything that you buy that's in a bag or a box is probably pretty bad for you. Even if it's a healthy meal, the amount of preservatives, just all of the extra, it's different than if you make a homemade meal, right? If you make homemade lasagna versus if you buy it from a box from Walmart, there's going to be 30 extra ingredients in that box. That, you know, versus
a lot of work for your body to break that down.
It is. It's a lot of work. It messes again with your gut microbiome. It's a lot. It causes a lot of inflammation. So a lot of those extra additives are very inflammatory in the body, and the body can only handle a certain level of inflammation. And that's why they're seeing so much. There's so many like autoimmune diseases nowadays, where like 50, 60, 70 years ago, you weren't seeing autoimmune diseases. And now like everyone has autoimmune diseases because the amount of inflammatory factors that are in our food and our environment, it's just too much for people's immune systems to handle. Plus, I don't know if stress is higher now than it used to be, but stress that plays an important part too in inflammation. But the amount of just inflammatory factors that there are in our lifestyles now are so much more than there used to be.
You're killing the say smart things thing, by the way.
Yes.
Make sure you tell Tyler that.
Your husband will be very
My husband instructed me to say smart things before I left.
What is, I'm going to give you a lot more opportunities.
Okay.
Dumb person to smart person. What is an autoimmune disease? I think that gets thrown around a lot. I mean, I've never really I hear it all the time, but like, I don't really know that I've ever looked up like what is an autoimmune disease? Like, what does that mean exactly?
So autoimmune disease is when the body starts attacking its own tissues. It sees itself as a foreign invader. Oh, wow. And a lot of times that happens. Like one example, there's a lot of thyroid issues that are autoimmune. Actually, a majority of thyroid issues, I believe now, are autoimmune. And they do relate that a lot even to gluten. There's certain things that you eat that cause inflammation, but they also look like certain receptors on certain part of the body. So then your body starts to see its own body as an invader, and it will start to attack it. A lot of stomach issues, Crohn's, stuff like that, it's all autoimmune. Your body starts to attack itself, attack its own tissues. And a lot of times the only way to deal with them, with autoimmune diseases, there's a lot of medications, but they suppress your immune system, which helps with the symptoms, but that's not good for anyone. Like you need your immune system, to be honest, you need your immune system really strong. So when you start suppressing it, it's going to help with those symptoms, but it's not going to help you long-term. You know, you have a high risk for cancer because you're suppressing your immune system or all sorts of diseases. So it's really important to address the root cause, which a lot of times is inflammation, foods that we're eating, environmental factors. There's so many. The list is so long now.
Yeah. I need an autoimmune disease that attacks the fat in my body.
Yeah, that's like the only autoimmune disease that I don't think exists.
Give me that one.
There's got to be a pill for that.
There's Ozempic now.
Yeah,
so.
Ozempic.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you were talking earlier, Brock, about like the 350 million people in America that need healthcare, and I don't know, it just kind of, it makes sense to me that, so like modern medicine, like it is working. Like we have, like I'm assuming if you look at like centuries of history, we have had population booms because of medicine development. Like people are living longer. The issue is that they might not be living better, but we're living longer. Mm-hmm. And because there are so many people, 350 million people in America that need healthcare, it almost does need to be efficient in a way. Mm-hmm. So it does make sense that we are where we are.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of like when I was in school, how they would like the food pyramid. Yeah. Like the old, like we tried to teach
Which is
kids,
upside down, by the way.
Yes.
I'm just going to throw that out there for the podcast.
So that's where, so actually that's kind of where I'm going, is like when people realized the food pyramid was upside down and then they changed it to that like sideways to like kind of fight that stigma because they wanted to keep.
I don't think I've seen that one yet.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know if I have either.
Bring back the old food pyramid. Bring back
Yeah.
the original. The new one looks dumb. Okay. I don't care if it's
no longer
upside
appear
down.
as a food rector.
It looks
The other one gives us
Rectangle.
chronic disease. The other,
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, stupid new food pyramid. looks ridiculous. Okay. I feel like it's easy to make a conspiracy out of the old food pyramid. Like, oh, this is because we realized it was upside down, and people jumped right to this is like what they're pushing to make you unhealthy, to make money in the healthcare system. Like that's like what most people think. I would venture. I would guess. And I wonder if it's the opposite. I wonder if like we tried to teach kids the holistic approach. And I don't know if they still do in school. Do you know if your kids see like food pyramid stuff? Like remember DARE? Like all that stuff that like they taught us I remember from like elementary school.
Right.
Like don't do drugs. Look at the food pyramid. Like be healthy. I don't know if they still do that. But like I think we tried, but people don't realize, they think the opposite. They think they were trying to make us unhealthy.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I think they tried and just messed up. But like anyway, my point is like, yeah, there are a lot of people and there does need to be efficiencies, and maybe to their credit, they did try. The studies were inaccurate and they actually failed miserably with the whole food pyramid thing. And kids grew up thinking the exact opposite. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Like
another conspiracy
it's generous,
theory.
It's generous in that like people think that they were using the food pyramid to like hurt people. And I don't. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. Was the food pyramid sponsored by the pharmaceutical industry?
Well, that's what I was just going to say. I don't know that as a fact.
or big agriculture.
But I have heard rumors, and it's something I should definitely look into. But to be honest, I really don't. It
really
doesn't
doesn't
bother
putting
me.
our
It
tin
doesn't
foil
make a difference,
helmets
but
on
I
now.
have heard that it was sponsored, and so it's very, very biased.
Okay.
Whether that is true or not, I don't actually know, but I have heard that. So
Yeah, maybe here's a good conspiracy to their credit. Like with COVID, like the hospitals getting flooded, and the healthcare system couldn't handle the influx of the massive need for medicine at that point. Like maybe it was the same thing. Like maybe there are experts who are really high up who have access to information and data that normal people do not. And it was like, man, if we don't focus on nutrition with children, like we all know that doctors don't get trained on diet and nutrition, and like they spend 8 hours in cloud. Like we all know that.
Right.
But like,
I don't know if we all do, honestly.
Okay. Well,
Because I just figured that out
Fair.
a couple of months ago, that some very small percentage of time, if at all, in med school is spent on nutrition.
yeah, that's what I've heard too. I don't know exactly what the hours are, but it's not a lot. When you go to school for 8 years to be a doctor, and you get, I don't know, a few hours or 8 hours on nutrition.
Even if you don't know that specifically, most people do know that like the most time that the healthcare industry spends on messaging for diet and nutrition is don't eat red meat. Like there's not a lot of effort put into prescribing healthy eating and exercise.
Right.
But like maybe in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever the food pyramid stuff and the teaching kids in school became pushed, maybe there were people seeing down the line, if we don't get ahead of this, like we don't know if our healthcare system is going to be able to handle what poor diet and nutrition is going to do to us a generation or two from now.
Right.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to add like a good conspiracy in with all the bad conspiracies. Like maybe they tried.
Maybe they
That was a nice try, Nick.
Just got it wrong.
So Stanford Medicine and National Institutes of Health, NIH, say anywhere from 3 to 56 hours. But Stanford says that most students spend fewer than 20 hours on nutrition in medical school.
Yeah.
And some up to 90%, 3 hours or
Okay.
3 to 10 hours.
Yeah. I know it wasn't a lot.
It just seems, is it, okay, let's just try to steel man the other side.
I don't know what that means.
Like, the other side of the argument, let's make it more solid, more concrete.
Okay.
Is it just because they refer them to a nutritionist? Like, or is it, it doesn't feel like that. I'm just trying to be generous.
But I will say that, and again, I'm only halfway through my schooling, but just with the patients that I have seen, over the last few months, I think we've referred one person to a nutritionist, maybe two, but one person, the insurance company, they don't pay for it very often. That's why they're not referred. I think more people would be referred. I don't know. Like I said, they'll cover, the medications for their high blood pressure and their diabetes and everything like that because they're overweight, but they can't go see a nutritionist. And I think that there's definitely people that would be very open to changing their lifestyles, but they really don't know where to start. It's very overwhelming. If you didn't grow up with that information, and you have to there's like different types of personalities. Like my personality is, I don't really need someone else to figure it out for me because I'm going to spend 400 hours and become way too, maybe a little extreme trying to figure out the answer.
Yeah.
But not everyone is like that. And so some people really do need that guidance. Some people can do it on their own, but some people really need someone to sit down with them and tell them and show them practically what healthy eating looks like. Because we tell them, okay, you need to eat healthier, and here's 30 seconds on what that looks like.
Sure.
But to actually go through and help change their lifestyle, like you need someone that's going to see you every week or every 2 weeks for an hour or 2 hours at the beginning. It'll become less as time goes on, but you need more of a mentor than just someone telling you to go eat some salads and, chicken or,
And send you out of the door with a piece of paper of healthy foods and then expect them to change their lifestyle. Yeah, it's not going to work. Couple points from what we were saying before. We were talking about diet. There's a pretty significant move. Now, I found your pyramid, by the way. It does look ridiculous.
It looks
I haven't seen it.
It makes no sense.
Do you want to see it? Is this the one?
That is the dumbest.
Oh my goodness, that's horrible.
Can't even see what's in each freaking
That
category.
looks like it would be something that they would show to like little children. Is
There's
that for
nothing
kids?
there. It's just, the pyramid is empty.
That's from my pyramid.
It's not even a
It's all
pyramid.
at the bottom.
It looks like a rainbow.
That's from mypyramid.gov.
That's we had to make everything equal. Like nothing, that's
Although the sliver for oils is smaller now.
see, it should be bigger. Well, it depends on the oil. I shouldn't say that.
It looks like vegetable oil.
No, vegetable oil shouldn't even be on there.
It's
Get that
what
off
it is.
there.
It's literally on the bottom of
Salmon, people, salmon.
mypyramid.gov.
Salmon oil.
Another thing
Or
is
just salmon.
a significant amount of nutrients are lost by the time they reach the shelf. Then you have a shelf life.
Oh, yeah.
So you're talking vegetables,
Yeah.
you're talking meats, you're everything. Most produce loses 30% of nutrients 3 days after harvest.
Yeah.
How long does it take to get to a shelf?
Right.
And are the cucumbers we're getting at our local grocery store like 10% of their original nutrients?
Right.
5%, 20%?
Right.
Go to a farmer's market.
Which a lot of studies even say that compared to 50 years ago, like I was watching something the other day that was talking about tomatoes and saying that they have about 10 to 20% of the nutrition that they had, I don't know, it was like 30, 40 years ago, just because our soil's depleted. Again, right, you're not eating them straight out of the garden. You're getting them like a week later and they're sprayed, with all this spray, which is also an absolute nightmare for people's bodies. And, so by the time you're done eating the tomato, you probably have more inflammation than if you didn't eat the tomato just because there's nothing left in it. Like the nutrition in our food is so lacking, and that's a part of the issue. Even people that are eating healthy nowadays are still struggling because they're not getting enough nutrition.
Yeah.
It's like you still need supplements even if you're eating healthy a lot of times because it's hard to get the nutrition that you need even from the healthy food.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of a point that I was thinking of when you were talking about, here's your new diet, and then you go to Walmart or wherever,
right?
And like you said, is so nutriently deficient, the foods that should be helping your health,
Right.
then you're kind of stuck.
Yeah.
Like, where do you go? A
Right.
farmer's market? Like, do you make your own food? And how practical are some of these things? Imagine being in the middle of New York City. Like, you don't just start a garden,
Right.
or
Yeah.
wild. And the other thing too is, Europe has some little bit over 300 to 400 approved authorized ingredients. Guess what it is in the U.S.?
Oh, it's thousands, isn't it?
More than 10,000.
Yeah. I knew it was.
300 to 400 seems low. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well,
That's
this is why when
because-
people go and they have pasta and
Yeah.
all this stuff over in Europe and they're like, I feel fine. And then you come over here and you have like a quarter of the amount and you just feel terrible.
And I've heard some of the difference too is because, well, I mean, obviously now there's a little bit more of a sourdough trend that's going on.
I've seen that.
Trend is an understatement.
I may have
Everybody
made a
keeps
couple loaves
shoving sourdough
yesterday.
in my
I know. It's probably a
Who
little
isn't
bit
making-
overkill.
Who isn't making sourdough nowadays?
Have you had my sourdough?
I know. You go on Facebook and it's Instagram and it's everybody's picture of their sourdough bread. But it
It
does
is a
make a
big
difference. The fermenting of the bread versus, now we have the instant yeast, which doesn't, the fermenting of the bread is what changes that flour and that gluten. It breaks it down so your body can absorb it. So there is something to that process and using it in other countries that we've gotten away from. And so you're right. That's why people can go to other countries and eat the pasta and not have an issue.
Yeah. What you just said reminded me of, okay, so people like the sourdough thing is crazy and people sell them for like $15 a loaf or
Right.
whatever, right?
Yeah, but they are good and you feel better after eating them versus their standard
They're so
loaf.
good.
Dude, sourdough is delicious.
We eat it
Butter
every
and
day.
sourdough is like the best.
And honey.
Oh yeah, honey's delicious. Okay, so there's all a video of somebody like selling their sourdough, like making a stupid TikTok and trying to advertise their sourdough. And somebody in the comments, like from Europe, was like, "It's wild that you Americans just like came across sourdough
just
finally
figured it out.
Right.
and sell it for $12 a loaf when like we've been doing this for centuries, and you can find any store in Europe that sells the same loaf of sourdough for $1."
Right. Yeah.
That's
Amazing.
crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like Americans are like $12 a loaf. It's a high, like special
Oh, yeah,
product.
it's
and like
high end.
in Europe, they're like, you can get anywhere and it's $1 a loaf. And it's
Because it
delicious.
takes 2 days to make. And in our culture, that's unheard
Yes,
of. Like,
yep.
you want to be able to make 10 loaves of bread in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a process. So
Yeah.
when I make my sourdough, I have to time it of what time I have to, pay
She makes
attention to
sourdough.
it. And
we just
She's
lost
one
all.
of
We
those-
just lost
yeah,
all
all
our,
credit.
our sourdough baking
Well,
listeners. Like,
the reason I started is because I was already buying expensive bread from the store, like for my kids, and it's like $6 a loaf.
Yep.
And so I'm like, this is ridiculous. And the whole point is just to try and decrease inflammation and certain things. A lot of the bread is just garbage. It's really hard to find a good quality bread. And so I was like, well, I'll try it, and it took a little while to figure it out, but it's very time consuming and you have to, really time it correctly. So I get why it's not on the shelves, because they can just, throw a bunch of stuff in a mixer and throw it in the oven and it's right, 100 loaves of bread are ready in a few
Yeah.
minutes probably.
and I would venture to say that any mass-produced sourdough loaf that you
Yeah.
find in a grocery store, like I'm guessing they're not making it the real way. It's probably some
No.
contrived recipe to make it
Right.
quick.
They
and-
could have just thrown a little bit of sourdough starter in and called it sourdough. Whether it's actually been fermented or not for the extended period of time is probably questionable.
Yeah. I'm not hating on sourdough. It's delicious.
Oh, no, I love
it's the best
sourdough.
bread out there.
It's kind of like a little bit of the evils of capitalism. If you're going to be mass producing something, it's not going to be a buck.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, it all goes back to like there's a massive population of people to feed and like there has to be efficiencies and
And a huge
how we do
incentive,
that.
profit incentive.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. If people will buy your $6 loaf of bread or $12 loaf of bread,
Right.
and you're not selling it for $1.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If I got to see one more feed my sourdough starter video, I want to throw my phone out the window.
Listen,
Nobody
it's-
wants to see that.
it's
Just give me the
trickier than
bread.
you think.
Just give me the bread.
It's like worse than owning a plant.
Like
I mean, it's so high maintenance to keep your starter going
Yeah, no
in
one
the
wants to
correct
see-
temperature.
Yeah, we don't
It's
need to
an
see
art.
how the sausage is made. Just give me the sausage. That's all I want. I mean the bread. Cut
Okay,
that.
so we've kind of addressed the microbiome, diet, food, how I guess overloaded our healthcare system is, and how it needs to be shifted away, maybe from the initial pharmaceutical intervention versus lifestyle change. Like, shouldn't that be the first thing that you try to do?
You would think so. I know, whether we get into it or not, just even with my own health journey, when I was having issues, that was probably the most frustrating thing, is when I went to the doctor, and like, I was 38 years old and I was in heart failure, and they were wonderful. They were very helpful, but they just put me on medicine. And they ran a few tests. They never figured out what was going on. And then they just sent me home with medicine. And that was honestly the last I ever heard from them. And so there was no discussion of like, she's 38 and yeah, there's heart issues that run in my family, but why did she go into heart failure one day? There was no addressing the root cause of it. And that was kind of what like had me like dive head on into trying to figure out. That's when I became a lot more passionate about like causes of things, because I was so frustrated with the system, the lack of help, the just slapping a Band-Aid on it. And I was like, well, I don't want this to happen again. How do I prevent this from happening again? Well, you don't know how to prevent it if you don't know what caused it. And so you would think that would be the first thing that you would pursue, is trying to figure out what caused an issue. But I feel like a lot of times it's not. Sometimes it is, but not always, especially with more chronic, complex things. It's different if it's just something that's simple and you kind of know what causes it. Sometimes there's definitely treatments for that, and sometimes it's addressed. But, a lot of times when I'm talking here, it's more the chronic, complex issues that don't come on overnight and they don't go away overnight.
Right.
Yeah.
Can you just make the delineation from acute and chronic for anybody listening?
Sure. So acute would be something that is...
Anybody listening?
For all the people listening.
For Brock, go ahead.
Yeah.
Some guy about the street asked me this.
Acute would be just a short term, right? Like it just started. You can also have a chronic issues, but have acute flare-ups, right? So acute is just the short-term issue. Chronic is usually, it depends on the disease that you're dealing with as far as what would be chronic. For some things, for pain, it could be like 3 months. For some things, it could be 6 months before it's chronic. Like some GI issues or certain things. It's different based on the disease. Yeah, sorry.
Yep. Yeah, you're talking to us like we're doctors. We're dummies. The way I like to think about it is like you could have severe heart disease, chronic. You have a heart attack. It's acute from your chronic condition. Yeah. That happens a lot with your lungs and a lot of your major organs too. Mm-hmm. But can be as simple as your autoimmune system.
Yes. Yep.
Pretty amazing. Okay, so let's dive in real quick. I know you don't have a lot more time, but I want to kind of get a background on, you mentioned your health journey, what that was about. I know it's probably not enough time to kind of get into it in detail, but just kind of a synopsis for the next time you come in, because you're coming again.
Sure. So
no matter what, she's coming in again. We're going to steal her again.
Perfect. So I really felt like I was really very healthy. We do have heart issues that run in my family. And I was aware of those. Actually, yesterday was the 25-year anniversary of when my grandpa got his heart transplant. So when I was growing up, my grandpa was always sick. And I didn't, it's like he's your grandparent. So you just kind of, seems more normal when he's your grandparent. But now that I'm older and I realize he was so sick at a young age, I understand a little bit more why it was such a big deal. But he had a heart transplant and his sister had a heart transplant. And we had so many, both at the Cleveland Clinic. And we had so many other people in our family with heart issues. And so some of my family members began to pursue like figuring out testing to figure out like, okay, there's got to be a gene that's running in our family because so many people are dying in their 50s, their 60s, 40s. And my mom had a cousin that dropped dead. I think he was 40. My grandpa's heart stopped for the first time in his 30s. He happened to have just gotten to the hospital because he wasn't feeling well, but his heart stopped. He was in his 30s. And so, just like some pretty extreme things. And so they figured out the heart gene. And so my mom had gotten tested and she was positive, even though she really wasn't having a lot of symptoms. And she's still doing really well. But that meant that if your parent has the gene, that there's a potential that you can have it. So we got tested, or I got tested, and I did come back positive, which I wasn't surprised, because the reason I pursued getting tested was because I was having arrhythmias, and working as a cardiac nurse for a long time, I actually had bought an Apple Watch that does EKGs. So I already knew ahead of time. I started, like, when I started to get arrhythmias, I started recording them on my Apple Watch. And so I kind of already knew what was going on. And so that was really difficult, especially, I think the most difficult part is when you are living a healthy lifestyle and you feel like you're doing everything right, and then you still get hit with health issues. It's very frustrating, because you still feel like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What should I be doing different? And with my personality of, like, deep diving and trying to fix everything, it was really hard mentally, because I was just trying to figure out all the answers. So I found out that was on New Year's Eve, and then I went out to Cleveland Clinic, because that's where our whole family goes. Anyone that has the gene goes out there, and met with the doctors, and they had me wear a heart monitor. And immediately, like, once they got the results, they were like, you have to go see an electrophysiologist, which that's the doctor you don't want to have to go see. Of all the people in my family, I think there is only, like, one. Like, I have one uncle that sees him. Like, my mom, she never had to see him. She had arrhythmias, but she was okay on medication. But mine were severe enough that they were like, you have to go see him. So I went to go see him, and he was like, you have to have a defibrillator put in. And that was really hard. So I drove out, we always joke around, because it was my 37th birthday. We drove out to Cleveland to get my defibrillator put in. And they had tried multiple medications to put me on. And to be honest, they were just awful. Like, and it surprises me, because they're medications that so many of my patients have been on, but you don't think about it. You just, okay, you're having this arrhythmia, take this medication. Well, I could barely get out of bed. I was so exhausted. It causes extreme depression. It was just really hard. And you go from being healthy to feeling like I felt fine. But then once I started taking the medicine and I had the defibrillator put in, then it's like, I felt so sick, even though nothing had actually happened to me. It was just the medications and the surgery. And I felt like my health was going downhill, and the stress that was involved with it. And then I felt like I started to get worse. I started to get more sick. And then it was about a year after that. It was in April. It was almost 2 years ago. I was at the gym one day, and sorry, I'll get emotional. I just couldn't breathe one day. And I didn't think much of it, because, I didn't think it was my heart at all. I was just like, okay, I'll just, whatever it is. I didn't felt sick, but I was like, oh, maybe it's COVID, who knows? And I went home, and I waited a week. I still couldn't breathe. It was hard to stand up. Like, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. And so I waited a week, and I went to the emergency room, and they ran a whole bunch of tests, and they did an ultrasound of my heart, and it showed that my ejection fraction, my heart output, was 30%, which is very low. I think for me, it was very scary, because I knew that when my grandpa was waiting for his heart transplant, his ejection fraction was in his 30s. It was around 30. And I didn't know at that time, like, I had no idea why or what happened. And I didn't know what had caused it. And I didn't know, it happened so quick. I'm like, do I need a heart transplant? But I went from being fine to being to having such low heart output. And so it was very stressful. And so we called the doctors out in Cleveland and told them we were waiting to hear back. And the next day I was very anxious, and I was just not feeling well. So I stayed with Tyler, and we were driving to, I don't remember where we were driving to. He had to drive around for work. So I was like, I'll just go with you. And for whatever reason, I think it was because my heart was so weak. I don't know exactly what happened, but I almost died in the car that day. And I remember just fighting to stay conscious. I couldn't stay conscious. And I remember, just telling Tyler how much I loved him, and telling the kid, made sure he told the kids how much I loved him. And because I thought that was it for me. And he was rushing me to an ambulance. An ambulance was coming to meet me. And thankfully I had enough wits about me to know to put my feet up, lay my head down, because I knew that if my heart was weak, if I could tell I wasn't getting blood. I kept saying, my heart's not pumping, my heart's not pumping. And so I laid the seat down, put my feet up, and I think that ended up being very helpful. I mean, within a little while, by the time we met the ambulance, I didn't feel like I felt like I was pretty coherent by that point in time, where a lot of it, I don't remember most of it because I was in and out of being conscious. So long story short, after that, I got a medical flight out to the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. And that's kind of where the whole journey began. And, like I talked about, they ran a bunch of tests and they honestly couldn't find anything. And within a few days, my heart output came back up and they did stress tests and I had a right heart catheterization, which was probably the worst test I've ever had in my life. It was absolutely horrible. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that at all.
What does that look like?
Okay, so again, it was on my birthday. It was the next year. I woke up and I had this.
When's your birthday so that we know,
I know.
what to look out for?
Last year I was not in the hospital on my birthday and it felt like a big deal. Because I remember them like telling me happy birthday before they did the procedure, like in case they killed me. It was so bad. So normally, like a heart catheterization, if you're going to go in and check for blockages, what you do is, that's called a left heart cath, but they go in, they put a sheath right down the vein in your neck, and they go into your heart. But for that, they put you to sleep, so you don't feel it, right? They sedate you, you're sleeping. But for a right heart cath, they're checking the pressures in your heart. So they can't give you anything. You are wide awake.
No way.
Oh, yeah, it was horrible. Oh. You're wide awake. They couldn't get the sheath down, so I can feel it stuck in my neck, and they're pushing on it.
Railing on it.
They go all the way down into your heart, and it's so weird because you can feel it in your heart.
Whoa.
And I'm like, it was so uncomfortable. I was just in tears. I'm like, this is the most horrible thing. And then they have to speed up your heart. So then they give me medicine. I thought my heart was going to explode. I was begging
Adrenaline?
for them to stop. It was. They have to see how your heart's going to respond to stress. They were stressing me out for sure. It was horrible. And I was like, I will never do that again. Like, I will die before I do that again. There's no way. I don't care what disease I have. I'm not doing that again. It was horrible. But yeah, they did all the tests and they really couldn't figure it out. And they just sent me home, and they sent me home, but I still felt horrible. Like I was in bed a lot of the summer. Not that I couldn't get up. I could get up in the morning for a few hours, but like, I just couldn't breathe. Like I couldn't breathe. I couldn't do anything. And it was so discouraging because they were like, we don't know what's wrong with you, So I ended up seeing, long story short, I ended up seeing a pulmonologist, a lung doctor, a rheumatologist for autoimmune diseases. I saw a gastroenterologist. I feel like I saw somebody else.
It's all the
I pretty much saw all of the ologists that you could see, except for a neurologist. And I was like, I don't even want to see a neurologist because
but maybe I need one.
I'm like, if that's all that's left,
right,
it's only going to be really bad news at that point in time. So I was like, I don't even want to go, because there was talk about going to see a neurologist. And I was at that point, I was like, I'm not going anywhere else. I had seen everyone, and nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. They would run tests and everything was great, and I still couldn't breathe, and I still couldn't do stuff. And so, yeah, it's been a long journey, and I've made a lot of progress. Like, I feel a lot better, but I've still never been able to get back to 100%. And I think it's been very difficult. It's been very frustrating. It's been interesting though to see God's hand on this whole journey, because right before I got sick, I had signed up to go back to school, and I didn't have any direction for what I was going to do. I had been toying with the idea, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll go back and at least finish my bachelor's, because the kids were in school, and I was kind of just itching to do something. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do my nurse practitioner, but I really didn't see myself going and just like working as a nurse practitioner. Like, it didn't feel like it really fit into my life, but I kind of had this urge to do it. And so it's been interesting to watch the whole journey that's taken place, and just how out of this whole entire thing, my passion for functional medicine, seeing and experiencing firsthand the medical system as a patient, not as a nurse. It's different when you're a nurse. Like, you know the system, you're like, oh, the system's totally fine. And then you become a patient, and you become that patient, which is the patient that is really kind of the annoying patient, because they always have the same symptom and you can't figure it out, and you're bouncing from doctor to doctor, and you just kind of get like titled, you know, it's like she's just that patient. And I'm like, I'm that patient because we can't figure out what's wrong with me, not because I'm super needy or just bored or, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. And so experiencing the medical system from the patient's perspective in a very difficult and complex situation, I think was very, very beneficial to what I'm doing now, because I've noticed that already, even with the patients that I've seen, I feel like I believe them, if that makes sense. Like when they come in and people are like, oh, like they just are always complaining that. I'm like, yeah. And I believe them, and I want to help them, and I want to be the person that will help them, and I won't give up on them, and I'm not going to label them as just annoying or drug seeking or whatever it is, because I believe that they actually have an issue. It's just nobody's taken the time to figure it out yet. So that's been, I think, a very important part of my journey. If you're trying to find the bright side of it, which sometimes is hard to do, that would be probably one good thing that's come out of it.
Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's so important and very easy in a high stress field to lose that human element and to not really be able to relate with your patient who needs mentoring, like you said before. That's not a word usually associated with medicine,
right?
As far as patients go. So
yeah,
that's a valuable thing. And I know that a lot of what you've been going through has been touching other people too. And a lot of the wisdom that you have and that you are continuing to learn is going to change lives. And I'm really excited about that. How much more school do you have?
I have 1 more year, and then I'll be done by nurse practitioner. And I'm working pretty hard, and I'm hoping that by the end of next summer, I'll also be able to have my functional medicine degree finished as well. It's actually pretty in-depth. I think a lot of people think functional medicine is like, okay, well, change your lifestyle and eat healthy and exercise. But it's actually way more in-depth as far as like the pathophysiology of disease and of inflammation and certain things. It's way more in-depth than my nurse practitioner school. So it's a very in-depth field of study. It's not as basic as people think.
Sure.
And functional medicine doesn't just, it's not just about not using medications, because medications can be a wonderful tool, but the goal is not necessarily to stay on medications long term. It's like, okay, how can we use medications to help you get relief while also, you know, figuring out the root cause of the problem. So so that's been very challenging. I feel like a lot of it's over my head, so I have to just listen to it 3, 4, 5 times to try and understand it. But I'm hoping by the end of next summer, I'll be done with both things. And I'm hoping my 5-10 year goal is to eventually have my own functional medicine office, but I do have to have a certain amount of hours in before I can open my own business. I could jump into functional medicine right away, but chances are, like with insurance companies and working for a hospital or a clinic, like you're not really going to be able to do that unless you go out on your own. So.
Dang.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're only going to be
patient.
Nick's going to be the first patient.
You can help me figure out. Now, you said that you
I'm
won't laugh
now.
at people and they won't become annoying patients.
I never said I wouldn't laugh at them. I never said that.
You wouldn't make fun of them when they ask you for help with their problems.
I think I only said I would believe you, but
What problems, Nick? Right on
Sam
there.
laughed at me. Okay, if I eat too much protein, I don't know if it's protein, but I've drawn a correlation. I get sore.
Sam
Have
did
you ever
laugh
heard of
at
that?
you.
He did. He straight up laughed at me. It was pretty funny though. You ever heard of that? Dang it!
It's just
not laughing. I'm not laughing. I have not heard of that. However, I would gladly do research on that because
Okay,
I love to do
let me
research.
tell you-
on
let me
stuff.
tell you real
but
quick,
I
real quick.
don't. I don't know.
I have noticed it. I first noticed it when I would like double up on protein powder scoops. Like if I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to like eat my snack today. I got to have 50 grams of protein powder instead. Like, and I would do that, and more than so that's like double the serving. Whenever I did that, I would get like 10, 15, 20 minutes later, maybe half an hour later, I would get like achy. I get achy. And then, so I was like, all right, so it's when I double up my protein powder, that's when it's happening. That's all I knew. But every single time for since I could remember. And then I noticed it when I had chicken. There was like an evening where I had Brielle made chicken for dinner, and I had a lot of chicken that night.
Okay.
And it started happening if I ate a lot of chicken.
Right.
And so like, to me, it's like, all right, well, like that's a lot of protein. Like maybe
Right.
all I knew was the protein powder at first, which is like basically all protein, but I knew there's stuff in it.
Right, yeah.
But then it happened with chicken. So anyway,
Happened with chicken too.
Give me an answer and get back to me.
I'll have to research that, but
You're just a weirdo.
that's where I say I've not heard of that before, but I will not give up on you quite yet, Nick.
I need help with my chronic
Protein
illness,
issues.
protein to current. Yeah. I don't know. It's weird. I can't explain it. But anyway.
Well, if anybody's listening and they're like, "Oh man, I feel like I just scratched the surface of this conversation," we did, and we would love to have you on many more times. If you'd be interested, I hope it was
I would love
you.
to come back on. It was super fun.
Yeah, good. You were nervous about it before, and I told you it was going to be great. Yeah, it's so much fun. It's just us.
It was fun, yeah.
And so much good information and so much really needed advice in this field, especially in this day and age, with just where we are in the country and our health, generally speaking. So really fascinating and excited for the next conversation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Anything else, Nick?
No, thank you. That was super fun. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks for having me.
Okay, cool. All right, that's it. See you next time, everybody.